Is this the dagger?
It's Friday, guys, and you guys already know what time it is. Welcome to another episode of the On the Ball Show here on the Right Way Sports Network, where I'm joined by my co-hosts Christian DeBlock, Justin Lassertosa, and James Parker. Guys, how are you doing on this March?
I'm doing great. March Madness tonight. The NBA's been great too, so we get a little bit of both, which I love.
Right.
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a good day. We saw a little upset earlier on in March Madness. We'll probably talk about that later on. But March Madness and the NBA, it's been a pretty good week.
Yeah, no, today's been a very good day. Excited for a lot of basketball tomorrow and Sunday and for the next couple of weeks. So excited to talk tonight about it.
For sure. And before we get going, make sure you guys go download our mobile app right after the show. It's the best way to access all of our content. But with that being said, let's get into the March Madness. So we've had a lot of action going on, and although we're going to get into the games later on today, I wanted to know, who do you guys have winning it all? Who do you guys have hoisting that trophy, cutting the net at the end of this March Madness? Christian, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so I was debating about a couple different teams throughout the week. I am going with Illinois. I was going to go with Gonzaga, but wanted to change things up a little bit. I think Illinois is one of those teams that can definitely stay with them offensively, certainly with Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Cockburn. So I think those two guys alone, plus the rest of the guys they've shown they can beat any team in the Big Ten, which is important because that was a very good conference. But in terms of playing Gonzaga, I expect both of those teams to make the final. And we'll see some great players. Obviously, Jalen Suggs, Cody Kidsbury. There's a lot of different guys for Gonzaga, but I believe that Illinois can get it done when it matters most. So I have Illinois winning it all.
Man, I have to ride with that same sentiment. I have Illinois winning it all as well. I know Thomas got on me earlier today for picking Illinois, but given their strength of schedule, what they've proven this season, I'm really impressed with Ayo. He's one of the better point guard prospects this class. I like him a lot more than Auburn Sharif Cooper, but that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, I've just been really impressed with what they've been able to do this season, given their strength of schedule. So I have Illinois winning it all as well. But we have seen a lot of upsets, and although Illinois did win, it is March Madness. So, Justin, who do you have winning it all?
I have it being Gonzaga and Oklahoma State in the championship. I know Oklahoma State is playing right now, and at the half they were losing. I'm not sure how that's looking right now. But I've got that as the finals, and I'm going to go with Gonzaga. Jalen Suggs, in my opinion, is the second best offensive player in college basketball right now, behind Cade Cunningham, obviously. And Kispert, he's been amazing. He could do it all offensively. He could shoot. He's been extremely efficient. I think like 54-44 this year. And they have all the personnel alongside that. And with Oklahoma State, Cade Cunningham, I think he's just going to be able to get them there. They have the personnel around him to do that. It might not be comparable to other teams that they're going to have to go up against, but they have the best player in college basketball, and it's not really a discussion whatsoever. So I think it's going to come down to those two. Evan Mobley, he's better than Suggs, but Suggs, he has the much better team around him, I'd say. And Gonzaga, they've been unbeatable all year, and I think that's going to continue, and I think they're going to be the national champions this year.
James, who do you have winning it all?
Well, my final four is Illinois, Gonzaga, Baylor, and Florida State. And there's a lot of offensive powerhouses in this tournament this year. And I love Jalen Suggs. He's very well-rounded, but I'm going to go with Illinois. I think Ayo and Kofi are the two key factors for Illinois, and I think they can just about beat anyone in the tournament.
Yeah, we have 3 Illinois and 1 Gonzaga, so all 4 of us have a 1 seed taking it all. And with that being said, we have had a lot of upsets today, including Ohio State getting upset by Oral Roberts. earlier today. I did not expect that. My bracket has officially busted because of that game. But what other upsets do you guys see occurring this weekend and moving forward into March Madness? Justin, let me start off with you on this one.
So personally, I'm going to start off with Oral Roberts for a second. I didn't think they were going to win today against Ohio State, but I thought they were a sleeper team for sure. I mean, I just thought it was a bad matchup, but I thought they could stack up against a lot of teams that are higher than them. I mean, they were 15th, and for Oral Roberts, I mean, they can play at any pace they want. They could play fast, they could play slow, they can be patient. They're extremely physical, they have good spacing, and they have good depth. But outside of them, I have to go with Eastern Washington. I really like Kim Aiken Jr. He's really physical. He plays defense. He could finish. He kind of reminds me of a Paul Millsap type. I don't know if he's going to get drafted, but I mean, if they make a run, I mean, he could fly up some boards and he could, get in there. If they don't, he won't get drafted. But I mean, he's a great player. Groves, I mean, he was the freshman of the year this year, and he's a solid two-way guy. Offensively, he's great. And they also have great depth. Another guy I really like is Michael Meadows Jr. Michael Meadows. He's not an NBA prospect, I would say, but I mean, he's a really solid college role player. I mean, he could shoot, he could defend, he could do it all on that side of the ball. And this team as a whole, I mean, they play physical. I mean, I've heard some in interviews, some of these guys, I mean, the physicality, I mean, the culture they bring to the table when they go out, I mean, they're not looking at a team thinking, oh, they're the one seed. They're going to go out there and they play their competition, and they have the personnel to knock off some teams. So Eastern Washington is one of my teams, and also, as I said, Oral Roberts. I didn't think they were going to win, so they did bust my bracket, but I think they're sleepers as well, and I think they could get past Florida. I'm not completely sure about that, but that's a different topic for a different discussion.
And before we continue with this, Sean did ask in the comments, if Gonzaga wins, are currently undefeated, are they one of the greatest teams in college basketball history? I'll start. I mean, they're absolutely one of the greatest teams. I mean, when you go undefeated, you're going to be one of the greatest teams of all time. However, from a roster construction standpoint, I know they didn't win it all, but if it was a 7-game series, give me the Karl Anthony Towns-led Kentucky basketball team every day of the week. What do you guys think about that question, though?
I think they would, as you said, I think they would be one of the best teams ever because, I mean, going undefeated and then winning the title, I mean, we don't see any teams in sports really do that. And there's sort of this myth, you go undefeated, you're going to lose once the big games come. And, I mean, that could happen. I mean, the pressure can catch up to you, and the big moments can catch up to you as well. But, I mean, Gonzaga, if they do it, I mean, they're up there. But, I mean, like, from an on-paper perspective, just from the roster, I mean, they have Suggs, they have Kidsbury, but, I mean, it doesn't stack up to some other teams in college basketball history. So I wouldn't say they're the best, but they're definitely up there. Maybe the most successful team of all time, though.
Yeah, I completely agree. If they were to win, they would be undefeated, which is very rare. You don't see it very often. I think the last one was the Indiana team when they talked about Kentucky and Duke missing the tournament. That was the last time, I believe. So in terms of that, I agree. I think they would be a top 5 team of all time, probably somewhere in that range, because it doesn't really happen that often. But the one thing I do want to talk about is they have the top seeded teams in their bracket in the region are dealing with COVID. If you know, Kansas was on a pause. They missed, or they had to drop out of the Big 12 tournament, and Virginia had to drop out of the ACC tournament. And both teams could possibly get upset. We don't know. But they are going to face some tough teams down the line if they do. I would assume they could probably face an Iowa team with Luka Garza, who could win Player of the Year. Obviously, if you get to the Final Four, you're probably seeing one of the likes of Baylor, Illinois, if they get to the championship. So I think they're top 5. I don't know if I would put them as the best team, like you mentioned, that Kentucky team and a couple other teams bound to happen in the future. But yeah, in terms of top 5 for sure for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think you look at Gonzaga's offensive power. They score over 90 points a game, which is ridiculous, especially in college basketball. And when you look at the roster, obviously it's a very good roster. But to say that they would be a lock for the best team in college basketball history it's a little quick. We've seen so many good teams over so many years. It's kind of hard to put a specific ranking on them if they were to win this year. But if they did win and go completely undefeated, they would definitely be a top 5. Yeah,
I mean, in terms of Gonzaga, we all share the same sentiment. Obviously, if they go undefeated, they would be one of the greatest teams of all time. But to continue on what we were saying, Christian, who is your biggest upset team? What other upsets do you see occurring this weekend and moving forward into March Madness?
Yeah, so I mentioned it before. Virginia is a team I think will go down tomorrow. I think Ohio with James Preston, a guy that Tom Sipe, who works for us, is big on. I think it's really ironic because, and it's a situation we've never seen before. I think Virginia will come to Indianapolis tomorrow. They're going to have like a shoot around, and they haven't played or practiced in a while, so they're going to basically be really rusty. And they're a good team. Tony Bennett's a great coach. They obviously won the championship a couple years ago. But this team isn't as talented, and Ohio's dangerous with James Preston. So I think tomorrow night we could see a 13 seed beat the 4-seeded Virginia tomorrow.
My biggest upset, and I know a couple people share the same sentiment, and I have Iona winning against Alabama. I haven't really been sold on Alabama this season. I don't know. I just feel like that's one sneaky victory. I mean, that's like the biggest glaring upset on my bracket. But in terms of other like miniature upsets as well, I haven't been that impressed with LSU as well. Just in terms of like the SEC, many of their teams haven't impressed me at all. Cam Thomas, people claim that he's like one of the best scorers in the nation, but he hasn't really been that efficient of a scorer. So in terms of the SEC, I haven't been that impressed with LSU either. So I would take St. Bonaventure winning that game as well. But yeah, those are two of my most memorable upsets. There are probably other ones spread across my bracket. But yeah, those are my two main upsets. Justin, what upsets do you have?
I already touched on Eastern Washington. I mean, I think they can make the Sweet 16. I really do. I had them going there. They won't go farther than that, in my opinion, but I think they'll make the Sweet 16. And I want to talk about Ohio a little bit. I'll get into a guy I really like on their team a little later once we get into sleepers. But I mean, I think Ohio, I forgot to mention them. They're going to do great too. I won't go too in depth about it because Christian, he nailed it around the head. He was amazing about that. But I think they're going to win. And I think Jason Preston, Vanderplas, I think they're going to lead them to the Sweet 16. And I think those are going to be probably the two biggest upsets. And also another team I like is Winthrop. They were 23-1 this year. And a guy I really like is DJ Burns Jr. I mean, he's so good in the post. He's so good. Adonis Arms, I mean, he could defend. He's physical. He's a good slasher. So that's another team I like. But for me, mainly, it's Eastern Washington.
James, what's your biggest upset?
Being from North Carolina, I would really like to see this upset happen. Honestly, I don't think it will happen, but I would really like to see UNC Greensboro somehow knock off Florida State. I don't find it likely, but I think if Isaiah Miller plays like he's been playing the last couple of games, he's scored over 25 points in the past 5 games on average. I think if he has a career night, it would be nice to see them beat Florida State. I don't see it happening, but being from North Carolina, I would really like to see that happen.
Right. And obviously all of us had some upsets, some larger than others. But there's also like other things which come with March Madness other than like the entertainment, obviously rooting for your favorite collegiate team, seeing who wins, making brackets. It's also a time to scout. It's a time to scout the incoming NBA prospects. So with that being said, obviously there's guys like Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Jalen Suggs, the top tier of NBA prospects that are in March Madness. However, there are several. This is one of the deeper draft classes in recent memory. There are several guys in March Madness right now who are going to be very good NBA players. So with that being said, Christian, which player who is currently in March Madness do you want people to keep an eye out for? Who you think could really be a really solid pro in the next level?
Yeah, I know you mentioned LSU before, and while they have been inconsistent at times, and that kind of shows why they're an 8 seed, I think they are a dangerous team, and they have a 3-headed monster offensively. I know you say Cameron Thomas is inefficient. They also have Trenton Wofford and Javonte Smart. They're dangerous, and I think their run it looks good. I think without Isaiah Livers, we don't know how Michigan will play. They did look good against Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament, but they didn't end up winning. So I think if they were to get past the St. Bonaventure, which it's a toss-up for me, I think that favors them to make a deeper run. So I think any of those three guys, especially Trenton Wofford, who has a lot of size, he played well against Alabama. I think he had almost 40 points in the championship game in the SEC. And that hasn't been a great conference. Obviously, Kentucky has been abysmal, to say the least. And there's a other bunch of teams. Obviously, Tennessee dropped out today, who's also in there. So I think that's one team, and they have three guys. So just for one guy, Trenton Wofford, just because of his size, his ability to score from the post, I think he could be a guy, if they make a deep run, that could find himself being a nice first-round pick for sure.
Justin, who's your biggest sleeper prospect who you want people to look out for?
So I actually have three. I'll get through them quickly, but I touched on this guy a little bit before, from Ohio, Jason Preston, and Christian touched on him a little bit too. I mean, I think he's one of the most talented guards in the entire class, and I think he's about to prove that. I mean, he could push the pace, he could pass in the half court, and he could pass from the open court. He can play really fast. I mean, he could play blazing fast at 90 miles an hour, but he could also slow it down and control the game at his own pace. He could shoot. He's efficient. And he's one of the best pick and roll and best pick and pop guys in the class. And I mean, Ohio, they have one of the best pick and roll big men in all of college basketball in Dwight Wilson III. And they also have one of the best pick and pop big men in all of college basketball in Ben Vanderplas. So I think he's going to get a lot of assists off of those two guys. Also off of guys, the role players, the spacing that they have. So I think he's going to rack up a lot of assists, show the playmaker that he is. He can get rebounds. I mean, I think he's 6'3", and he averages 7 rebounds a game, and that's a huge part of his game because he could get them, he could push the pace, pass it to the open guy down there, down the court, and I think he's going to show a lot of that in March Madness, and I think he's about to fly off draft boards. Another guy I like is Janae Broome. He kind of reminds me of a Kenneth Faried type. I don't know how successful he'll be in the NBA, but I think he's going to start flying up some draft boards. He's from Morehead State. He's an amazing finisher, amazing inside presence on offense and defense. He has such a nice touch, one of the best touches in college basketball. And I think Morehead State, they'll at least win one game. I really like them a lot. And then finally, another guy I really like is Jared Butler out of Baylor. I mean, he's really crafty. He has high IQ. And Baylor, even though I'm not sold on them as some other people, I think they're going to make the Final Four, but I don't think they're as good as their record or the Final Four says. But Jared Butler, I mean, he's been the best player on this team in my opinion. I mean, high IQ, he's patient, he's really crafty, and I think he's going to lead them far. And if he can lead them far, right now I'm pretty sure he's projected around late to beginning of the second round or late first round. But I think he could solidify himself as maybe a 20th pick, something like that, if they could go far. And he could show, I'm here, I could win games, I could do what you need as a point guard, as a backup or something like that. So I think he's one of the sleepers as well.
James, who's your biggest sleeper?
I have a couple of big sleepers. And one guy that I watched a lot coming out of high school was Brown. Super athletic, extreme athleticism. And unfortunately, over the season, saw another player take a starting spot that I also like. Kai Jones. Obviously, 6'11". He has a perfect skill set for the NBA. He's amazing, and he's a guy that I've been looking at. And another guy that I've been watching is Franz Wagner for Michigan. He obviously, he's a great shooter. He has great shot creation. But one thing that I've seen him improve on really well is defense. His defense is incredible. And what I would say is incredible, but it's definitely improving. And he's a guy that
And in terms of my biggest sleeper prospect, he is on one of the better teams. We did mention him earlier, but with the Jalen Suggs hype, I think he does go kind of unnoticed. Cody Kidsbury is one of the best shooters in the nation. I mean, he's not going to be a star at the next level, but he could be like a Joe Harris type player. I know one of our NBA analysts, Jackson Bragman, did mention that on one of his Instagram posts, how his shooting can translate to the next level like someone like Joe Harris. And I think that's a very valuable player to any championship level squad you're trying to build. And I think if you get Cody Kidsbury, probably I'm not sure if I would spend a lottery pick on him, but if you could spend a mid to late first round pick on a guy like Cody Kidsbury, if you're a team with like multiple draft assets, I think that could be a really helpful tool, especially like a team like my Thunder who have a possibly like 3 first round picks this season. If we get someone like if we have 2 top 10 picks hypothetically, and our last pick in the first round is like a later first round pick, I wouldn't mind someone like Cody Kidsbury on a bad floor spacing team. He could add a ton of value. That's one of my bigger sleeper prospects. Given the Jalen Suggs hype, I don't think he's getting enough recognition as he deserves. But we're going to keep it rolling. We're going to keep it rolling, and we are going to get to the NBA because that is what this show is all about. Earlier this week, PJ Tucker was dealt from the Houston Rockets to the Milwaukee Bucks. The full trade details are a little foggy, but overall, the main important details are PJ Tucker and a first is going to be sent to Milwaukee for DJ Augustine. DJ Augustine and another first round pick. So I want to know, guys, we obviously know who won this trade, but I want to know, what will PJ Tucker add to this Bucks team? I know Justin mentioned a couple months ago that they had the components of making the NBA Finals. Do you think PJ Tucker is the piece that puts them over the top, or do you think, nah, that's not enough? Justin, I'm going to start with you on this one.
So for PJ Tucker on the Bucks, just to break down the trade first, I mean, I like it for both sides. You forgot to mention DJ Wilson's in that trade, but I mean, like, I don't think he does too much. But I mean, he does have some solid potential in the Rockets. They're playing around with some guys right now, so they can see what he brings. If he doesn't bring much, cool. It's DJ Wilson, so nothing much out of that. I mean, they still get a pick out of it too, which getting a pick out of a 35-year-old expiring contract, that's a big deal, in my opinion. And DJ Augustine, he's been terrible this year, so the Bucks, I mean, they lost nothing giving him up. But for the Bucks' sake, I mean, as Pranav said, I think we all know who won this trade. It's the Bucks. So I think this gives the Bucks a lot of flexibility to run Giannis at the 5. So Brooke Lopez, he's been extremely underwhelming this year. That first year in Milwaukee, he was amazing. But now, as the big he is, I mean, like, you can't translate him to a playoff series. You can barely translate him to regular season games. He's a great backup big. I think he could excel in that role. And I think he has to be used a little differently too, because, I mean, he's still great in the post, but he's used as this just primary shooting big. And he's not even shooting that great, I believe. But I think this gives him a lot of flexibility to run Giannis at the 5 because he's 6'7". I'm sorry, not 6'7". He's 6'11". And he could be, honestly, the best rim protector in basketball. I mean, if inserted into that situation. I mean, his help defense, it's easily the best in basketball right now. So if they could run out a lineup of Holiday, DiVincenzo, Middleton, Tucker, and Giannis, I think that'll be amazing. And I think Giannis, he's going to open the floor up for PJ Tucker a lot. PJ Tucker, I mean, I hear some people calling him washed because he's been terrible this year, to put it lightly. But I think that's because, I mean, like, with the Rockets, with all their injuries, I mean, he's not going to be good because, I mean, like, he kind of is a ceiling raiser. I mean, he's just going to be a role player who gets shots in the corner. He plays good defense. He's durable, and he could get rebounds. That's basically what he is, and he's not going to help a 18-game losing streak team. So I like this a lot for them. I think it gives them a lot of flexibility. Hopefully Mike Budenholzer will, play around with rotations instead of just keeping Brooke Lopez at the 5 for the whole time, because, I mean, he's been bad. So I think they have to play around with it. But, I mean, they did win the trade because they didn't really give anything up. So I like it from the Bucks standpoint.
I absolutely love this move. Everything about this move was fantastic for the Milwaukee Bucks. What PJ Tucker will give them in a hypothetical series against the Brooklyn Nets is someone who's not going to contain Kevin Durant, because you can't really contain Kevin Durant, but he's going to give a body you could throw at him, a guy who's going to make his life much more difficult than it has to be. You have someone you could throw at Kevin Durant. Well, Giannis' main responsibility, he doesn't have to worry about switching onto Kevin Durant in the perimeter. What he has to do is just be that excellent help defender he is, guard the rim. And by the way, Giannis is the best center in basketball now, apparently. But what Giannis's life with PJ Tucker at the 4 becomes so much easier. They can run a defensive lineup of Dante DiVincenzo, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, PJ Tucker, and Giannis, which is probably the best defensive 5 in the association. I really love this move, everything about it. I mean, like you said, Justin, they didn't have to give up much. They get a guy who could space the floor in Houston, he didn't have a great spacing situation. He wasn't really motivated. He dealt with injuries. But in this new situation, playing with a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who draws so many defenders and getting more open shots than he probably ever has, I think this is going to be a blessing for the Bucks and PJ Tucker. And I think in a potential series against the Brooklyn Nets, now they can actually push them. Like, they can actually make something interesting. Christian, what are your takeaways from this trade?
Yeah, I totally agree, Justin. You do make a good point, though, that he is not playing well this season. I'm just looking at his numbers right now. Shooting 31% from the three is not what he's usually done for his career. He's a career almost 36% three-point shooter. So down year, but yeah, like you mentioned, the motivation and the character around the Rockets organization this season has been really up and down. They were pretty motivated after Harden got traded. Christian Wood was playing like an all-star before he got hurt. So you can't really look too much into it. Hopefully he will perform better for the Bucks. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for them now is, can a guy like Donte DiVincenzo really take it to the next level? Because obviously they spent a first-round pick on him. It would be really nice to see him take that next level, because that makes them even more dangerous. But yeah, I think they're right there. I would still take the Nets in a 7-game series in the playoffs, but I think it's a lot closer than people would think previously prior to this trade, because obviously PJ Tucker's been there. He's experienced. He's 35 years old, so he knows what he's doing, and he's been in the playoffs for years upon years. So I think in terms of that, it'll be really interesting to see what they would do if they do end up getting to the conference finals against the Nets.
I agree, and like you said, we're seeing a lot of people pick teams like the Nets or the Sixers over the Bucks, which isn't something that really we did last year, because we didn't have a team like the Nets in the Eastern Conference last year. And I agree. I like this trade. It definitely gives them more spacing. It clears out the lane a little bit. Hopefully he shoots better in Milwaukee. He'll have better shot creators around him, like Drew Holiday, who can really elevate his teammates. And hopefully that he'll bring more defensive value also. And like you mentioned, Donte DiVincenzo, I really like him, and he's a good defender, but he doesn't have the physical build like PJ Tucker does. PJ Tucker played the 5 a lot last year in Houston, and it actually worked. A lot of people didn't think it would work, but it usually worked when he played the 5 in Houston. And hopefully this can put them over the top for Milwaukee's sake. I'm not sure if this will give them the title immediately. They may need another piece or two that can just give them some more shooting and maybe a little bit more perimeter defense. But I really like this trade for the Bucks, and I think it puts them right neck and neck with the Brooklyn Nets.
One thing I want to add, we talked about DiVincenzo a little bit, and I just want to say, I don't think he's going to take a jump this year, but I think he's one of, if not the most underrated player in the NBA, and I think he has one of the most underrated features in the NBA. When you watch him play year by year, he's made so many strides to his game. His rookie year, he was bad. It's that simple. He showed some flashes. He didn't get too much playing time, but he wasn't great. Second season, amazing defense, solid shooting, not what we wanted, but amazing defense, amazing hustle, amazing rebounding for a guard. Now this year, he's developed, he's not a great shot creator, but he can put the ball on the floor when needed to. It's mostly not many dribbles, just, pull up shots off a few dribbles. But if he keeps going in this direction, he's 24 years old right now. So his ceiling is kind of limited if he doesn't make a huge jump like I expect him to. But I think in the very near future, he could be like an 18-6 kind of guy, 6 rebounds. And I think he could easily be this third guy. Not this year, because he's still got a full off season of work to get to that. But just the flashes, he's made improvements every year. So it's a little off topic, but I think he has the most underrated future in the NBA for an individual player.
Yeah, like Will said, Bucks have a guy now in PJ Tucker who could bother wings like Jimmy, Harris, Tatum, Brown, KD in a playoff series. And in terms of the Bucks, I don't think people realize that the gap between them and the Nets isn't as big as it seems, because the Nets, although they do have the star power, obviously, and I would pick them in a 7-game series, they don't have the defense and they don't have the depth. The Bucks have both. So with that being said, the MVP race is heating up. Obviously, Steph and Embiid have dealt with recent injuries that may derail their cases. So I wanted to know, who do you guys have winning? Who do you guys have currently at the top of your MVP leaderboard, and who do you see finishing this season with the MVP? James, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, with Curry and Embiid down right now, I have Jokic at number 1, and honestly, this shouldn't be a surprise. He's having one of the greatest offensive seasons that a center has ever had, and usually with centers, obviously, we don't see playmaking or craftiness like this. But as the game has evolved, we've seen players like Nikola Jokic get the spotlight and really lead teams to deep playoff runs. And I really like Nikola Jokic. He's extremely efficient. With the Nuggets, without him, would probably be a lottery pick team. And I love Jokic. He's my number 1 candidate right now with Embiid and Curry out. But I do have to say I do have Giannis. Giannis is going up my rankings right now. He's been consistently great the past 3 to 4 years. Clearly, he's having an incredible season this year again, very similar to how he played last year and the year before. Hopefully, the Bucks can succeed more, and if they keep up this success, they had struggles earlier this season, but if they can continue to win games, I think it will be close between Giannis and Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of that. I have Giannis ending – he's probably not going to win it because of the voter fatigue. Obviously, if I tune into a major sports show, he's not going to be talked about among the MVP conversation. It's just how it is. They don't want to talk about Giannis winning the MVP again because that's a boring pick. But let's be real. Giannis is probably going to be the deserving MVP at the end of the season. His elite defensive impact is absolutely insane, and having PJ Tucker in that front court is going to be even more helpful for him because he has less defensive responsibility. It's going to enhance his rim protection, his switchability, his help defense. It's going to be such a blessing, like I said in the previous segment. But with that, he's also been incredibly efficient. Every single month, I've seen a stride in Giannis's game. He's improved as a shooter. I mean, he's taking shots with more confidence. We saw that Philly game the other day. To close out the game, he took a 3 with no hesitation. He did a step-back mid-range shot over Dwight Howard. His confidence is building up. And the biggest part about Giannis's game I've been most impressed with this entire season is he's a really good free throw shooter now. I mean, this month, he's shooting around 80% from the free throw line, which is incredible because we're talking about Giannis here. Giannis was a sub-70 free throw shooter for seasons prior to this, but now he's getting to that 80% range where you can't hack him. You can't hack him because if he goes to the line, it's probably going in. So the strides Giannis has taken in his game, he's heard all the talk this offseason. He's heard the talk about, his game is fake, which makes absolutely no sense. But he's heard all of it. He's taken the strides in his game. He's improving each and every month. So, yeah, I believe he's going to be the deserving MVP at the end of the season. Christian, who do you have winning the MVP?
Yeah, I think you guys make both great cases for those guys. I do want to just bring up another guy that I think isn't getting talked about enough, which is ironic because he's that good of a player. But James Harden, I think, is a guy that should be at least in the conversation. Just look at these numbers. 14-1. Brooklyn's 14-1 in their last 15 games. He's averaging 27.3 points per game, 10 rebounds, and 11.2 assists per game. And he's almost shooting 40% from 3. I think ever since he got to Brooklyn, he's played at a fantastic level. And I personally had questions because of the 3, and there's only one ball. So obviously it was going to be interesting to see how they move the ball. What's their ball movement like? Is Kyrie going to be a ball handler and primary ball handler? Is it going to be James Harden? What will KD do? I think the questions were rightfully so, but they've proved that they are probably the most dangerous team in the NBA, probably one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in NBA history. And James Harden is definitely the biggest factor in that. And his playmaking ability, he hasn't played like this in years. Obviously in Houston, his ability and his primary reasoning was to go and get the ball in the basket. And getting the teammates the ball obviously was just kind of a secondary thing. And just because of D'Antoni's system, it naturally happened. But I think James Harden is playing at probably his best level of his career, which is crazy. And I think he doesn't get enough credit for what Brooklyn's doing right now. So I think those two guys you mentioned before, Giannis and Jokic, are right there, and I think one of those two will definitely win it. But James Harden should be in that conversation for me.
Justin, who's your leading MVP candidate at this moment of time?
So you guys, I mean, Giannis, Jokic, and Harden, they're my top three right now, and you guys all got that right on. And obviously that's without Embiid playing. So I think Embiid would be second to me if he was still playing. But right now, if I had to pick one, I have to go with Jokic. I mean, James said one of the best offensive seasons for a center ever. It's the best offensive season for a center ever. And, I mean, the only person that really comes remotely close is 2000 Shaq. I mean, this Jokic, I mean, he's a much better playmaker than Shaq was. And, I mean, he's still insanely efficient on a much tougher volume. And, like, he could shoot better, obviously. So, I mean, with Jokic, I mean, this Denver team, they're terrible without him on the floor. And, like, defensively this year, they've been better than they should be. I mean, their best defender has honestly been Jokic. And that's not me saying he's some elite defender or anything, but, I mean, he should get more credit on that end. I mean, he's not a great rim protector. He's not a great post defender, but he gets into passing lanes. He makes good rotations, and they're a good defense somehow. I mean, him and Murray have been great defensively this year, but offensively, obviously, that's where his argument comes in. And, I mean, this season, Jokic has been the best offensive center of all time for a single season, and he's having one of the best overall offensive seasons in NBA history in terms of impact, efficiency, and playmaking. But Giannis and Harden, I don't think they're far behind whatsoever. And I think Jimmy Butler, he's not going to win it, and I don't think, he'll be the guy that rightfully deserves it. But, I mean, I think he's making a case for at least top five. I mean, I know he wasn't an all-star. I know he hasn't played as many games as these guys, but the Heat, by every single metric, they're better with Jimmy on the floor when he's playing, and they're better eye test-wise when he's playing. And record-wise, too, they're like 11-1 right now. So he's not on the level of Harden, Jokic, Giannis. But I think he's climbing the ranks towards fringe contention. Not the winner, but fringe. But I would have Jokic as my winner right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the best offensive version I've seen of Jimmy Butler. I mean, he does all the little things on the court. He's extremely intelligent on defense. I mean, what the Heat have been able to do. I mean, people ask, oh, was the bubble run a fluke? No, they were missing Jimmy Butler. And when you adding Jimmy Butler is like essentially adding a superstar at the trade deadline. He has a major impact on that team's success, and you're seeing it with his playmaking ability, with his ability to hit tough shots, his defense. Everyone just gets better around him, especially like guys like Bam, guys like Duncan, guys like Hero, who get more open shots with Jimmy on the court. But with that being said, if you guys don't have anything more to add, we're going to enjoy this March Madness opening weekend. Thank you guys for tuning in. It was a really good episode. Hope to see you guys next week. Peace.
Is this the